Adam Burke is joining me now. He's managing editor at VSiN.com, the 24/7 broadcast network dedicated exclusively to sports betting, which you can hear on Fox Sports 1230 The Gambler. You can also find him on Twitter at Skating Tripods. Adam, you got a 216 area code. I assume you're cheering for the Guardians this afternoon.
Yes, sir. Born and raised in Cleveland. Spent about 35 years there before I moved out to Las Vegas to take my job with VSiN. So I miss home. I especially miss it at this time of the year when the Guardians are still playing. So, yes, I'm definitely rooting for the Guardians, that's for sure. But, again, my job in the sports betting world means I have to stay impartial. I have to take my emotion out of it. So, anytime I write up anything Cleveland-related, it's definitely an unbiased opinion, at least in terms of what I'm putting out on the website.
Let's look at all the ALDS games and all the baseball games on tap this afternoon. We'll save the Guardians-Tigers for last. I should point out, too, for this week only, new users can get their VSiN Pro subscription for 40%, the regular $175 football special price. Discount code ADAM. Discount code ADAM. You'll have access to VSiN's 24/7 channel, special betting guides, pro betting tips, and more, all through the Super Bowl. VSiN.com/subscribe. Use the code ADAM for 40% off the regular $175 football special price. So other than the Guardians-Tigers today, Adam, we got the Royals-Yankees coming up at 7:38, and I believe the Yankees are a 1.5 run favorite in that game.
Yeah, Yankees on the money line in the -145, -150 range. Cole Reagans and Carlos Rodon in that one. Interesting, we have 4 left-handed starters here today across the 2 ALDS games, but Reagans was phenomenal in his start against Baltimore in the wild card round. Went 6 innings, 6 shutout innings, 8 strikeouts, no walks, only 80 pitches, kind of cramped up a little bit towards the tail end of that start, but he was absolutely terrific, and a guy that, had some control issues late in the season. Big innings workload increase for him, maybe kind of wore down a little bit, but then came out and pitched extremely well in that first game against Baltimore. So I would anticipate he pitches well here today against the Yankees also. I mean, the big thing for the Royals this season was Reagans, Waka, and Lugo, their top 3 starters, really good at limiting walks, really good at limiting home runs. Those are 2 things that you want to have in your corner when you talk about the Major League Baseball playoffs, because the run environment is just different. You're not stringing a lot of hits together off of all these great pitchers. So I think the Royals have a good chance today in an underdog role. The problem for them is they were the worst offense in baseball in September by a large margin, tied for the fewest home runs. They were substantially worse than anybody else, including the White Sox, in terms of weighted on base average, WRC plus, runs scored, stuff like that. So the problem is I don't know if Kansas City can hit today off of Carlos Rodon. So I think the Royals are live as an underdog because of what Reagans can provide, but I think it's a very low-scoring game here. I like the under in that one.
I like the under that, too, and the value on the Royals on the money line at +130 isn't bad.
No, not bad at all, especially when you consider, Reagans is a guy who can work deep into games. He's very efficient with his pitches, and, the thing about the playoffs that you want to look for is you want to look for teams that are going to be able to use their best arms, and because of the off-day structure here in the American League Division Series round, off day tomorrow, it's a travel day for all the teams. They had yesterday off as well, so they could split up the National League and the American League, which means all hands are on deck. So if you're the Royals, you don't have to send out any lesser arm because you're going to get Reagans for probably 5 or 6 and then use your best bullpen arms from that point forward. So, yeah, I think the Royals are definitely live for the upset here today. I couldn't bet it. I couldn't get to the window on that one, but I would take the Royals if I had to based on the price that you mentioned.
Phillies and Mets tomorrow, and this one looks more evenly matched, at least when I'm looking at the payouts.
Yeah, this has been a really interesting series. Had a couple of bullpen melts here for both teams in this series. And, it's tricky with the bye, right? Because you have starters that are on really long layoffs. You have relievers who go 6, 7, 8 days without pitching. They're not accustomed to that. Those are guys that want to pitch every day, every other day, something like that. So it's not a big surprise to see some of the Phillies' arms struggling a little bit here in this series, particularly coming out of the bullpen. But, look, it's one of those things where, managers have a quick hook, so we'll see how long the starters are in this game. We'll see how long the starters are in all of these playoff games here. But, the Phillies going with a guy in Aaron Nola who definitely a well-known commodity in the playoffs, a guy who's kind of been the 1B to Zach Wheeler as 1A. So, the Phillies certainly have a little bit of a leg up in terms of the starting pitcher for this game. But beyond that, it's as much of a toss-up as you can get, especially with how the Mets have been playing lately.
Any bets in that game that you like if you think the game's going to be too close to bet?
Haven't really handicapped that one yet. I kind of take it day by day when you get to the playoffs. But I will say this. I mean, it's going to be a very raucous environment there at Citi Field, where the Mets, of course, played the whole wild card round against Milwaukee on the road. They split in Philadelphia. Could have been better, but obviously it's, a really good scenario when you take home field advantage away. So I think the Citi Field crowd could have an impact in that one.
Dodgers and Padres also tomorrow, so you probably haven't handicapped that yet, but what are you thinking on that game?
Yeah, no, I mean, two very different games here, right? In LA, you had the blowout for the Padres. In yesterday's game, you had, a lot of runs early and then not so many runs late in game one. So it's been an interesting series here so far. But I will say this, I mean, I really liked San Diego all season long. And obviously the Dodgers offense is on another level, especially with what Shohei Ohtani has been able to do this year. But Freddie Freeman's not really the same right now. I love the Padres bullpen. They just bring a bunch of flamethrowers out in the late innings. I like the Padres for the rest of the series, and I think for that to be the case, they'd have to win Game 3. So haven't fully handicapped that game yet, but my thought is to kind of use the Padres as a starting point and then see if I can kind of confirm my bias a little bit in that one.
So the big game that everybody here is looking forward to in 45 minutes, Guardians-Tigers. And the Guardians, at least on DraftKings, are getting 1.5 runs today.
Yeah, Guardians are slight underdog here in this one, which, I mean, it makes sense. Tarek Skubal is going to be the American League Cy Young Award winner. He was excellent in his wild card round start against Houston. Guy is a very tough customer, very tough to hit. Also was throwing a little bit harder in that playoff start. His slider was a little bit sharper, a little bit more velocity on that. He's a very tough guy to hit. And Matthew Boyd maybe isn't as much of a tough guy to hit, just simply because the stuff isn't as overpowering for him as it is for Skubal. The thing about Boyd, though, is he's very efficient with his pitches. He throws a lot of strikes. So the question is, for the batted balls today for Detroit, do they find holes or do they find fielders? And when you get a pitch-to-contact type of guy, even though Boyd had a good strikeout rate over his 8 starts for Cleveland in the regular season, he's still primarily a pitch-to-contact guy. Skubal does not. So this is one of the few instances in this series where maybe Detroit has a little bit better of a chance at putting balls in play as opposed to, maybe in some of the other games and certainly against the Guardians bullpen. So I think the Tigers can get out ahead early, but Cleveland's bullpen is such a tremendous weapon. It keeps them in every game. I think the Guardians ultimately win this game, but I think you'll be able to get a better price on them in game because I think they trail early as Boyd shakes off some rust.
Interesting. The bet I have made on this game for today is I've got the under. I've got the under at 6 runs, paying off minus 115.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think the difficult thing here with Boyd is, I think his last Major League start was September 21st. So it's been a very, very long time. And sim games just don't really align with what it's like to pitch in the playoff atmosphere, stuff like that. Also, Stephen Vogt's can have a very, very quick hook in this game, as he will throughout the course of the postseason run for the Guardians, however long that may be. I like Matthew Boyd over 3.5 hits allowed because he is a guy who does throw a lot of strikes. I don't think he'll be super sharp early on in this game, but I could definitely see it under, especially because, that Guardians bullpen is just outright dominant.
Any prop bets you like?
No, outside of the Boyd one, that's really the only one I was looking at. I do think it's really interesting that Boyd's outs prop today was 11.5 that I saw out there in the market. Another nod to the fact that Stephen Vogt is going to be very, very aggressive with his bullpen. The day off structure that I alluded to earlier is really beneficial for Cleveland here because they don't have to worry about using guys back-to-back days because you had off days, yesterday and then also one tomorrow. So, Vogt will be very aggressive with the bullpen. And so I could see a scenario where Matthew Boyd does leave this game fairly quickly. I could see the same thing in Game 3 with Alex Cobb as well. So I think under 11.5 outs for Boyd, even though it's a shocking number to not see him complete 4 innings, I don't think it would be a shocker given the context of the playoff environment.
Adam Burke, managing editor at VSiN.com, on Twitter, at Skating Tripods. And for this week only, new users get their VSiN Pro subscription 40% off the regular $175 football special price. Use the discount code ADAM to have access to VSiN's 24/7 channel, special betting guides, pro betting tips, and more. VSiN.com/subscribe. Code ADAM for the discount price. And Skating Tripods on Twitter, VSiN.com for more. And, of course, you can listen on Fox Sports 1230, The Gambler. Adam, thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, our NBA betting guide comes out on Thursday. So if you become a VSiN Pro subscriber, you'll get that this upcoming Thursday here.
Fantastic deals. Thanks, bud.
Have a good one.